Fiat friends, this is Greg from HPSI. We're on our way back from the Fiat convention 2014. It was near Chicago. Had a great time. That's my 500L up in front of us, and I'm in the Abarth. While I was up there, some people mentioned some interesting things to me. I guess there's a rumor out there that the Fiat is so incredibly inefficient that it requires turbo boost to sustain highway speeds. Just thinking about that, it seems obvious that to anybody who has any automotive knowledge that would be completely false. There's a normally aspirated version of this car with a substantially similar engine that has no problems cruising on the highway. It certainly doesn't need turbo boost to do it. In fact, the car will go well over 100 miles an hour. I've personally seen that in rentals with an automatic. Also, there are old Fiats from the 60s with 633cc engines and no turbo, and they'll sustain 70 miles an hour. They'll have a little difficulty doing it. The tires have to be inflated properly and so forth, but they can do it. So the idea that this car is so inefficient that it needs turbo boost to sustain highway speeds is just crazy. But let's think about where that's probably coming from. So we're cruising along here on the highway at a little bit over 70 miles an hour. You can take a look at the speedometer there, about 74. And if I look down at the gauge next to the speedometer, the gauge labeled Turbo PSI, it does show some boost. Let's have a look at that and see if I can aim and drive at the same time. So let's say that's showing about 3 pounds of boost. So what's going on there? Well, typically turbo boost means boost pressure above ambient in the intake manifold. The truth is, though, this gauge in the Abarth does not take a direct reading of air pressure in the intake manifold. It works quite differently. If you want a gauge that does that, some people make ones that go into the stock pillar. A lot of other people have just fabricated those themselves. But for our purposes here, we've done something different and installed a second gauge, which I'll show you in just a second. Well, we're cruising along here at about a little over 70 miles an hour, and more or less level ground. You can take a look at the turbo PSI gauge and see that it definitely shows some boost there, about 3 PSI. But if we look at our aftermarket gauge, it shows just below 0, and in fact there is 0, but it hangs around 0, -1, maybe -2 inches of mercury. So very, very slight vacuum, certainly not under boost. So I still suppose someone could say, well, Greg, that's not very efficient. I mean, you're essentially at manifold pressure values that would be nearly full throttle in a normally aspirated car just to maintain highway speeds. Well, that's in a normal car that would be true, but you have to understand the way the new Fiat engine and the multi-air system works. The whole idea of multi-air, or at least a large portion of the idea of multi-air, is to improve fuel economy and reduce emissions. One of the ways it does this is by throttling the engine, not traditionally with the throttle itself, meaning the butterfly and the throttle plate, but it throttles the engine with the intake valves. It just doesn't open them as much. That allows the electronic throttle to stay open a little bit more. Thus, the engine doesn't have to expend any fuel to maintain vacuum in the intake manifold. That means less pumping loss. Less pumping loss means better fuel economy, lower emissions. So the fact that we have essentially ambient pressure in the intake manifold, in fact, is a result of an extremely efficient design, not an inefficient design, and that's my overall point here. The engine does not require boost, and the car does not require boost to sustain highway speeds, and the relatively high numbers you see in the manifold during highway driving are actually due to the multi-air system being efficient, not the opposite. It's new technology, and it works very well. Well, this is a good time to add to the little video I made, the mini rant on the efficiency of this car, and I'll show you folks the inside of the HPSI car. It's not too different from just about every other Abarth out there, but we have a 5-position map switch. You can see it there. It's fairly useful, especially for us when we're doing tuning. We can switch between 5 different maps and test a bunch of maps in one test drive. So I find that pretty useful. When we're not doing testing, I really don't use it much. I just leave it in the map that I like, which is, these days, that's typically stage 2. And if for some reason, well, I normally leave the car in sport mode, and if for some reason I want the car to be a little bit more mild, which is pretty rare, I'll just take it out of sport mode. So I use the sport mode button sort of as a map selector switch, I guess as the factory intended, and use the other one more for tuning. However, the other map switch is pretty useful. You can hold 5 maps with it if that's what you want to do. You could have a valet map, an anti-theft map, the kid gloves map, or whatever you want. There's some options there. Additionally, we have the aftermarket boost gauge that I installed, and that's pretty neat. And we've got, let's see, I'm driving next to a semi here, so I gotta be careful. Aftermarket shifter. It's from Chris at Euro Compulsion. It shortens the throws. It feels really good. It's very nicely made. I didn't install it myself. One of my guys did, but in any case, from what I heard, the install went really easy, and I really like the shifter. That's not the shift knob that came with it. That shift knob is from Brian at NGen Fiat, which I believe is now called NGen Customs and Performance. Brian's a great guy, and he has some neat stuff, and he's especially good at styling, and he's a good mechanic also. I saw a really nice full 2.5 exhaust system he fabricated for the 500L. Sounds fantastic, looks great. I like him, and I like his stuff, and I like the shift knob he sent us. I'm thankful for that, and it really complements the shifter that Chris from Euro Compulsion gave us, or actually sold us, I should say, also. Here are the lights for the water injection system. The green light indicates power to the pump. Basically, that means system on. Red light indicates low fluid level. So that's about it. Other than that, it's just like any other 2012 Abarth. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.